Hi guys, it's Reagan and welcome back to another video. Today's video is bananas because friends, we are going to be doing my final TBR of 2024 or my December to be read pile. This month feels like it's do or die. I got some major books on my list I'm trying to get to before the end of the year, plus some seasonal fun reads. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive right in, starting with my December Book of the Month selects, who I'm also partnering up with for this video. The books this month are truly fantastic, with one of them not only being on my December TBR, but also is a select for my online book club. So if you guys want to read along with me, I will have that link down below. If you're not familiar, Book of the Month is an online bookish subscription service. Every single month, they curate a selection of books from a variety of different authors and voices in the community. Always new releases, always hardcover and sent directly to your door. Always easy to skip if you're not interested in any of the titles that month. And they also now have audiobooks. Plus, if you join this month, you're able to get this adorable sticker sheet for free sent alongside your selects as well. And per usual, I of course have a very special offer code. If you use the code TINSEL, you're able to get your first book for only $5, a brand new hardcover book for $5. Truly amazing deal for this season. But let's chat about the books I picked out because I have two amazing ones I cannot wait to read. First book I selected was The 13th Child by Erin M. Craig. I really enjoyed this author's writing. It's lyrical and dark, and her new release honestly sounds right up my alley. It follows our main character Hazel, who's always known that she was very different from her siblings. Born as the 13th child, she was always set aside to be given to the gods later in life. And she's basically spent her entire life waiting for Death, her benefactor, to arrive at her doorstep to take her away. And one day, Death does just that, arriving to take her away. When he does, he also grants her a very strange ability, which is the ability to deduce anyone's ailment that has them on the brink of death, and also gives her the ability to heal them. However, though, she pretty much has to use her abilities nonstop to help people pass peacefully into the next life, working alongside Death, and this haunts her. At the beginning of the story, she finds herself in the royal court, where she meets a very handsome prince whose father, the king of the kingdom, is marked for death. And obviously our main character Hazel is a little torn on what to do. Again, I really love Erin M. Craig's writing. It's very lyrical. This sounds like it's going to have a really interesting sort of twists involving death. Obviously a romance, I'm sure, is going to take center stage too. Overall, I just hope this is a very entertaining, good time. And the second book I selected from Book of the Month was very well timed because as I mentioned, this is the selection for my Cozy Seasons book club. So if you guys want to read along, I will have that link down below. The book is The Most Wonderful Crime of the Year by Ali Carter. I'm kind of having a Christmas romance moment, and I have a couple other Christmas romances on my TBR this month. And this one in particular just sounded so much fun because it's both a Christmas romance, a rivals to lovers situation, combined with a closed door mystery story, and the combination of those two things just sounds so unbelievably entertaining. I feel like this is going to be cute and festive and fun, a perfect sort of lighthearted book club read as well, and I'm honestly gonna be starting this book today. Once I finish filming this video, I'm reading this. Alongside that holiday romance, I also hope to pick up The Holiday by Catherine Walsh. And this is a friends to lovers holiday romance story. In it, we're following our two main characters, Molly and Andrew, and they're both Irish living in Chicago, and they met unexpectedly 10 years prior to the start of this book when they were both traveling home on the same airplane, traveling back to Ireland. Ever since then, they look forward to their yearly plane trip together and have really began to form a close friendship while still sort of living their own separate lives. At the beginning of the story, this tradition has been going on now for 10 years. And after a very unexpected, freak snowstorm, they both find themselves kind of stranded and then eventually taking a very strange route to try to get back home to Ireland for Christmas. This is a book sort of set both in the present and the past as we reflect back on various trips they've taken together, friends to lovers, also very much centering family. I hear this book is hilarious. Obviously, an Irish holiday setting sounds very appealing to me. When I asked y'all on Instagram for your favorite holiday romances, this was one of the most recommended books I got. And this book and the sequel, which I also might read this month, depending how fast I can get through my first two holiday romances. The next book on my TBR TBR for the month is my primary priority read, and I sort of feel like I'm biding time until this book comes out. So much of my TBR hinges on how quickly I'm able to read this book, because I will be reading this the day it comes out, and I'm just not quite sure how long it's going to take me. And of course, I'm talking about Wind and Truth by Brandon Sanderson. This is Stormlight Archive, book number 5, the final book and the first sequence of this epic fantasy series. One of my all-time favorite series, a series I've also now read multiple times through, and I cannot wait for this new release. If you're not familiar, this is an epic fantasy series by Brandon Sanderson. Over the course of this series, we are following a huge cast of characters from all different sort of walks of life and political connections and situations that they find themselves in. Structurally speaking, we're following like one cultural group of people that's very war-centric, and they have been fighting another war against their greatest enemy now for generations, and the war has sort of evolved from one of revenge to one of sport and economy. Basically, their entire like government and social structure has moved to this war front, kind of transforming the real meaning of this conflict. But again, war is like very centered to their culture. In this series, we're following again a lot of different characters. One character is Kaladin, who is a doctor turned slave forced to participate in the most dangerous occupation on this war front. Follow a general of one of the armies. Follow a young woman who's trying to become a scholar to save her family from economic disaster. We follow various scholars, other politically important figures, an assassin. Like, again, this series really evolves and spirals in so many different directions. Magic system is amazing. The plot will absolutely captivate you. Characters to fall in love with. Again, it's a series I come back to time and time again. I just enjoy it so much, and I can't wait for this 5th book. I'm hoping to read it quickly, but you just never know. It's gonna be long, so I'm saving all the time I need for it, basically, if you know what I mean. Alongside Stormlight 5, there are also some other series I'm hoping to get a little bit further in before the end of the year. The first book is A Little Hatred by Joe Abercrombie. I read a lot of Joe Abercrombie this year and honestly loved all the installments, and I'm really hoping to start the next series within this world that he has created with A Little Hatred. Read Joe Abercrombie's books so quickly as I find his characters and his plotline so fascinating, and I honestly hear that this series is like his best one yet. But if you're not familiar, Joe Abercrombie is a grim, dark fantasy writer, and the thing about his books and series is that they're full of complicated, fascinating, nuanced characters that are honestly all pretty terrible people, but still you like and root for them, but you can never quite anticipate what decisions and directions are going to go within the plot. His books are shocking and violent, full of such interesting political twists and turns. Standalone novels have been some of my favorite books set within his world and universe, but I'm so looking forward to being introduced to some new characters and sort of the next chapter of this conflict that we have found herself in for a long time. But I think like a time skip might be happening in this book, and just in general, I'm so intrigued to pick it up. I also desperately want to get to the book that broke the world by Mark Lawrence. I read the book that wouldn't burn last year and absolutely loved it and made like my favorite books of the year, so I obviously want to get to the sequel as soon as I can, but I've definitely been procrastinating on it. This fantasy book is set in a fantasy world that sort of surrounds this massive magical library, and the library is not only the primary setting, but almost like a main character itself. The scale of this place is honestly hard to describe, and it just feels all-consuming, and how it sort of adds to not only the ambiance but the plot of the story is like one of my favorite aspects of this book and series. But in it, we're also following our 2 main characters. The first is a girl who grows up in an area called the Dust, which is this kind of remote, desolate place outside of the major city where the library exists. And at the beginning of this book, her people are attacked and she's forced to flee to the city, and she begins to work as an apprentice to this library. We also follow a young man who's been trapped in a chamber of this library his entire life with his siblings. Their lives and fates become very unexpectedly intertwined, and the mystery and the intrigue of the first book was just amazing, and it ended quite explosively, and I'm really looking forward to see like how the story is going to continue to evolve given all of the information we were given in book 1. I need to get to this, especially before I begin to forget things. Another series I definitely want to continue with before the end of the year is the Murderbot Diaries by Martha Wells. I want to first get to Fugitive Telemetry by Martha Wells, as well as The Network Effect. I will say the Murderbot Diaries has a few different reading orders online. I've opted to go in the chronological fashion, so reading book 6 before book 5. But if you have a strong opinion on what you think I should do, please let me know. But the Murderbot Diaries quickly has become one of my favorite favorite series I've read this year. In it, we follow our main character, Murderbot, who is a robot who has gained consciousness and feeling. Think of book one, we follow our main character, Murderbot, as it's trying to just sort of fly under the radar amongst humans, basically pass off that it's still able to accomplish the job it was programmed to do, which is protect humans on this like dangerous planet. But in reality, Murderbot is really only interested in watching its favorite shows. It has anxiety. It's constantly contemplating like, what does it mean to be alive? What does it want to do with its life? And also sort of unpack its own past. From there, we basically watch Murderbot go on a variety of different adventures, begrudgingly make friends from all different walks of life. It's hilarious, heartfelt, introspective, while also having like a really action-packed plot. I love the narrator and main character Murderbot. It is so relatable. Like, I love Murderbot dearly, and I just can't wait to see what it's going to get up to next. So I really want to check out at least 2 more books before the end of the year. It's just quickly become one of my favorite sci-fi series. It's both like cozy and heartwarming, but very, very, very intense. The next book on my TBR, I really need to get to soon because it is my IRL book club pick, and we are meeting in the early parts of this month, and I have not started yet. And that book is Wayward by Amelia Hart. This has been on my TBR now for a couple of months because I've known it was my book club select now for a while, and yet here we are procrastinating once again. And at this point, I have 10 days to read this book, and I have many holiday romances I plan to read before I even think about picking this book up, which I know is my problem that I should work on, and yet I probably won't. But this book does sound like something I would really enjoy. It's a witch-focused story following different women, a part of the same family throughout time. The first character we follow is Kate, and she is living in 2019. And at the beginning of this story, she's fleeing from her flat in London to a remote cottage to run away from an abusive partner. There, she begins to like uncover and begin to understand the legacy of magic within her family. We also follow a figure in the 1600s who's currently under investigation for witchcraft within her small town. And then lastly, another character in World War II who is struggling to not only find her identity, pushing to be able to pursue her interests in education, but sort of straitjacketed by social conventions of the time. She is also living in her family's remote and faraway manor. I think all of these storylines become intertwined throughout the story. A book I've heard really good things about, a book that I've heard so many of you guys recommend to me, and I will be reading it this month. I just desperately need to get to it soon because book club is coming up. It's gonna sneak up on me like it always does. This book on my list is one that came out recently that I just really think I'm going to love, and that is Air by Sabaa Tahir. I love Sabaa Tahir's YA fantasy writing so much. An Ember in the Ashes by this author is like one of my favorite YA fantasy series. It's just so entertaining with great action and intrigue and romance. And this book, I believe, is actually set in the same world, but is a spin-off. But this is a book set in a fantasy kingdom where we're following the perspectives of 3 young people. The first is a young woman who, after one hot-headed mistake, finds herself landed in an inescapable prison. The next is a down-on-her-luck tracker who uses magic to basically find any mark anywhere. She takes on this job to try to find this individual who's been killing children across the land, but after an unexpected chance encounter, things sort of unravel from there. And lastly, we follow the Crown Prince, who has no interest in actually ruling his kingdom. And again, things get very complicated for him, politically as well. I love a multi-POV YA fantasy story. Always have, always will, and this sounds like it's going to be amazing. I love Sabaa Tahir's writing. I love her plotting. I think this is going to be so good and like a really fast and engaging read. The last 2 books on my TBR I would love to be able to get to this month. I feel like it's unlikely, but just in case I'm having like the reading month of my life, I have them set to the side because they're books I feel like I would really enjoy and want to get to soon. The first is Rivers of London. This is a book that Clay actually picked up for me recently in our yearly book haul we like to do, and this is a like magical detective story set in London, and all of those are buzzwords for me of something I would really enjoy. I also believe it kind of has a mystery of the week setting and style to it, which is also something I tend to find like very comforting within books. Basically, this follows our main character Peter, who up until last year was just a regular old detective. But after investigating a recent crime, he basically witnessed like a magical attack, putting him on the radar of this like wizard detective, and now he finds himself being a wizard trainee, the first in 50 years, and his life and what he knows to be like reality has been turned upside down. All different types of magical crime, plague, London, and honestly, that just sounds like a blast to me. This series, I believe, is like really beloved, very entertaining. I'm hoping I really, really like it. I'm just so excited that Clay grabbed this for me. I hope to read it soon. And the last book that is on my final TBR for 2024 is Hild by Nicola Griffith. And I know it's probably going to be a dense read, but I also feel like based on the inputs of this book, it could be a book that becomes like an all-time favorite read if I give it the time and commitment that it deserves. This is a book set in 7th century England, and we follow our main character, who is a young girl who basically is said to have like prophetic powers. She can see into the future, and her powerful family members basically use this as a power grab opportunity and often use her in her own machinations. She's obviously in a very perilous situation, not only as someone who is associated with magic during this time period, but just also as a very young woman in general. And I believe the political landscape of this book gets really complicated, and I just love not only the historical time period this book is set in, but and just the overall vibe that the synopsis gives. I feel like this is going to be like a dense historical fantasy book, and I really love a dense historical fantasy book. If I just let myself have the time to read it, I really feel like I could love this. Alrighty guys, that is my final TBR of the year. Please let me know down below some of your priority reads, as I would love to know. And again, big shout out to this video's sponsor, which is Book of the Month. If you guys want to learn more, I will of course have a link to their site as well as that special offer code linked down below. But thank you so much for watching, and I will see you soon with another video soon. Goodbye.